So let's start the chapter 16, that is excretory products and their elimination. Animals accumulate ammonia, urea, uric acid, carbon dioxide, water, and ions like sodium, potassium, chloride, phosphate, sulfate, etc., either by metabolic activities or by other means like excess ingestion. These substances have to be removed totally or partially. In this chapter, you will learn the mechanism of elimination of these substances with special emphasis on common nitrogenous wastes. Ammonia, urea, and uric acid are the major forms of nitrogenous waste excreted by the animals. Understood? Ammonia is the most toxic form and requires large amount of water for its elimination, whereas uric acid, being the least toxic, can be removed with the minimum loss of water. The process of excreting ammonia is ammonotolism. Many bony fishes, aquatic amphibians, and aquatic insects are ammonotolic in nature. Many bony fishes, aquatic amphibians, and aquatic insects are ammonotelic in nature. Ammonia, as it is readily soluble, is generally excreted by diffusion across body surfaces or through gills surface in fishes as ammonium ion. कौन सा ion? Ammonium ion. Kidneys do not play any significant role in its removal. Terrestrial adaptation necessitates the production of lesser toxic nitrogenous waste like urea and uric acid for conservation of water. Mammals, many terrestrial amphibians, and marine fishes mainly excrete urea and are called ureotelic animals. कौन? Mammals, many terrestrial amphibians, and marine fishes mainly excrete urea and are called ureotelic animals. Ammonia produced by the metabolism is converted into the urea in the liver of these animals and is released into the blood, which is filtered and excreted out by the kidney. Some amount of urea may be retained in the kidney matrix of some of these animals to maintain a desired osmolarity. Some amount of urea may be retained in the kidney matrix of some of these animals to maintain a desired osmolarity. Reptiles, birds, and land snails and insects. Reptile, bird, land snail, and insect. Understood? कौन? Reptile, bird, land snail, and insect excrete nitrogenous waste as uric acid in the form of pellet or paste with a minimum loss of water and are called uricotelic animals. A survey of animal kingdom presents a variety of excretory structures. In most of the invertebrates, these structures are simple tubular forms, whereas vertebrates have complex tubular organs called kidney. In invertebrate, these structures are simple tubular forms, and in vertebrates have complex tubular organs called kidneys. Some of these structures are mentioned here. Protonephridia or flame cells are the excretory structures. Protonephridia or flame cells are the excretory structures in platyhelminths, that is flatworms, example planaria. Rotifers, some annelids, and the cephalochordate, that is amphioxus. Protonephridia or flame cells are the excretory structure in platyhelminths, flatworms, example planaria, rotifers, some annelids, and the cephalochordate, that is amphioxus. Protonephridia are primarily concerned with the ionic and the fluid volume regulation. किसमें concern होते हैं primarily? With ionic and fluid volume regulation, that is osmoregulation. Nephridia are the tubular excretory structure of earthworms and other annelids. Are the tubular structure nephridia of earthworm and other annelids. Nephridia helps to remove nitrogenous waste and maintain a fluid and ionic balance. Fluid and ionic balance. Malpighian tubule are the excretory structure of most of the insects, including cockroaches. Malpighian tubules help in the removal of nitrogenous waste and osmoregulation. Understood? Removal of nitrogenous waste and osmoregulation. Antennal glands or green glands perform the excretory function in crustaceans like prawns. Prawns में क्या होती है? Antennal gland और green gland परफॉर्म करती है excretory function को. Osmoregulation क्या होता है बताऊँ? Is the process by which an organism maintain the balance of water and dissolved material in its body fluid. ये होता है osmoregulation. So next we are reading the human excretory system. Understood? In humans, the excretory system consists of a pair of kidney, one pair of ureters, a urinary bladder and a urethra. A pair of kidneys, one pair of ureters, a urinary bladder and a urethra. Kidneys are reddish brown, bean-shaped structure situated between the levels of last thoracic and the third lumbar vertebrae close to the dorsal inner wall of the abdominal cavity. Kidney are reddish brown bean shaped situated between the level of last thoracic and the third lumbar vertebrae close to the dorsal inner wall of the abdominal cavity. Understood? Each kidney of an adult human measures 10 to 12 cm in length, 5 to 7 cm in width, 2 to 3 cm in thickness with an average weight of 120 to 170 gram. क्या weight है? 120 to 170 gram. Towards the center of the inner concave surface of the kidney is a notch called hilum, through which ureter, blood vessels and nerves enters. कहाँ से? Hilum से. Inner to the hilum is a broad funnel-shaped space called the renal pelvis, with projections called calyces. The outer layer of the kidney is a tough capsule. By capsule outer. Inside the kidney there are two zones, an outer cortex and an inner medulla. The medulla is divided into a few conical masses, that is medullary pyramids, projecting into the calyces, singular calyx. The cortex extends in between the medullary pyramids as a renal column called column of Bertini. The column of Bertini. Each kidney has nearly 1 million complex tubular structures called nephrons, which are the functional units. Each nephron has two parts, the glomerulus and the renal tubule. कौन से two parts है नेफ्रॉन के? Glomerulus and the renal tubule. Glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by the afferent arteriole, AFFERENT, afferent, a fine branch of renal artery. Glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by the afferent arteriole, a fine branch of renal artery. Blood from the glomerulus is carried away by an efferent arteriole, EFFERENT, efferent लेके जाती है. ठीक है. The renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule. The renal tubule begins with a double-walled cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule, which encloses the glomerulus. Glomerulus along with Bowman's capsule is called the Malpighian body or renal corpuscle. माल्फिजन बॉडी और रेनल कॉर्पसल किसे कहते हैं? ग्लोमेरुलस along with Bowman's capsule, उसे कहते हैं माल्फिजन बॉडी और रेनल कॉर्पसल. The tubule continues further to form a highly coiled network, proximal convoluted tubule, that is PCT. A hairpin shaped Henle's loop is the next part of the tubule, which has a descending and an ascending limb. The ascending limb continues as another highly coiled tubular line called distal convoluted tubule, that is DCT. The DCT of the many nephrons opens into a straight tube called the collecting duct, many of which converge and open into the renal pelvis through medullary pyramids in the calyces. Through medullary pyramids in the calyces. Understood? आया समझ? The malphizian corpuscles PCT and DCT of the nephron are situated in the cortical rind of the kidney. Cortical rind में क्या क्या है? Malphizian corpuscle, PCT and DCT of the nephron are situated in the cortical rind of the kidney, whereas loop of Henle deeps into the medulla. डूब गया loop of Henle deeps into the medulla. In majority of nephrons, the loop of Henle is too short and extends only very little into the medulla. Such nephrons are called cortical nephrons. जिनका छोटा होता है, ठीक है, उन्हें कहते हैं cortical nephrons. In some of the nephrons, the loop of Henle is very long and runs deep into the medulla. जिनका बड़ा होता है, अंदर घुसा हुआ होता है. These nephrons are called juxtamedullary nephrons. भूलोगे क्या है? कभी नहीं भूलोगे ना. The efferent EFFERENT arteriole emerging from the glomerulus forms a fine capillary network around the renal tubule called the peritubular capillaries. The efferent arteriole emerging from the glomerulus forms a fine capillary network around the renal tubule called the peritubular capillaries. A minute vessel of this network runs parallel to the Henle's loop, forming a U-shaped vasa recta. A minute vessel of this network runs parallel to the Henle's loop, forming a U-shaped vasa recta. Vasa recta is absent or highly reduced in cortical nephrons. Cortical nephrons का छोटा होता है, उसमें vasa recta absent होती है या फिर highly reduced होती है. So next is urine formation. We are starting. Urine formation involves three main processes, namely glomerular filtration, reabsorption and secretion that takes place in different parts of the nephron. The first step in urine formation is the filtration of the blood, which is carried out by the glomerulus and is called glomerular filtration. On an average, 1100 to 1200 ml of the blood is filtered by the kidney per minute, which constitute roughly 1/5 of the blood pumped out by each ventricle of the heart in a minute. Repeating it again, सुन लो वापस. On an average, 1100 to 1200 of the blood is filtered by the kidney per minute, which constitute roughly 1/5 of the blood pumped out by each ventricle of the heart in a minute. The glomerular capillary blood pressure causes filtration of blood through three layers. कौन सी? The endothelium of glomerular blood vessels, the epithelium of Bowman's capsule, and a basement membrane between the two layers. The glomerular capillary blood pressure causes filtration of blood through three layers: the endothelium of glomerular blood vessels, the epithelium of Bowman's capsule, and a basement membrane between these two layers. Understood? तो चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. The epithelial cells of Bowman's capsule, called podocytes, are arranged in an intricate manner so as to leave some minute spaces called filtration slits or slit pores. Blood is filtered so finely through these membranes that almost all the constituents of the plasma except the proteins pass onto the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. Therefore, it is considered as a process of ultrafiltration. किसको छोड़ के constituents of the plasma except the protein passes onto the lumen. The amount of the filtrate formed by the kidneys per minute is called glomerular filtration rate, that is GFR. The GFR in a healthy individual is approximately 125 ml per minute, that is 180 liters per day. कितना? 180 liters per day. ठीक है, कंफ्यूज करने के लिए कुछ भी आ सकता है, ठीक है, पर हावर, पर मिनट, बट करेक्ट है पर डे. द किडनी हैव a built-in mechanism for the regulation of glomerular filtration rate. One such efficient mechanism is carried out by juxtaglomerular apparatus, that is GGA. The GGA is a special sensitive ring formed by cellular modifications in the distal convoluted tubule and the afferent arteriole at the location of their contact. A fall in GFR can activate the GG cells to release renin, RENIN. यहाँ पे कंफ्यूज के लिए RENNIN इसकी वजह से बता रहा हूँ. To release renin, RENIN करेक्ट है, which can stimulate the glomerular blood flow and thereby the GFR back to the normal. A fall in GFR can activate the GG cells to release renin, which can stimulate the glomerular blood flow and thereby the GFR back to the normal. A comparison of the volume of the filtrate formed per day, that is 180 liters per day, with that of the urine released, that is 1.5 liters, suggests that nearly 99% of the filtrate has to be reabsorbed by the renal tubules. This process is called reabsorption. The tubular epithelial cells in different segments of nephron perform this either by active or passive mechanism. For example, substances like glucose, amino acid, sodium, etc. in the filtrate are reabsorbed actively. कौन होते हैं actively? Glucose, amino acid और sodium in the filtrate are reabsorbed actively, whereas the nitrogenous waste are absorbed by passive transport. जो nitrogenous waste होते हैं कैसे absorb होते हैं? Passive transport से. The reabsorption of water also occur passively in the initial segments of the nephron. During urine formation, the tubular cells secrete substances like H positive, hydrogen and K positive, that is potassium and ammonia into the filtrate. Tubular secretion is also an important step in urine formation as it helps in the maintenance of ionic and acid base balance of body fluid. Assertion reason बन सकता है या फिर true false बन सकता है चेंज करके. वो कैसे? Tubular secretion is also an important step in urine formation, that is true. Reason is as it helps in the maintenance of ionic and acid base balance of body fluid. Both assertion and reason are correct, and reason is the correct explanation of assertion. ठीक है. Next is function of the tubules. Proximal convoluted tubule, that is PCT. The PCT is lined by simple cuboidal brush border epithelium which increases the surface area for reabsorption. Nearly all of the essential nutrients and 70 to 80% of the electrolytes and water are absorbed by this segment. Nearly all of the essential nutrients and 70 to 80% of the electrolytes and water are reabsorbed by this segment. PCT also helps to maintain the pH and the ionic balance of the body fluids by selective secretion of hydrogen ion and ammonia into the filtrate and by the absorption of HCO3 negative, that is bicarbonate from it. PCT also help in maintaining the pH and the ionic balance of the body fluid by selective secretion of hydrogen ion and ammonia into the filtrate and by absorption of bicarbonate from it. Next is Henle's loop. Reabsorption is minimum in its ascending loop. कौन सी loop में reabsorption minimum है? Ascending loop. However, these rings play a significant role in the maintenance of high osmolarity of medullary interstitial fluids. The descending limb of Henle is permeable to water but almost impermeable to electrolytes. Famous line है, ठीक है? The descending limb of loop of Henle is permeable to water but almost impermeable to electrolytes. This concentrates the filtrate as it moves down. The ascending limb is impermeable to water but allows transport of electrolytes actively or passively. Therefore, as the concentrated filtrate pass upward, it gets diluted due to the passage of electrolytes to the medullary fluid. Clear? Next is distal convoluted tubule, that is DCT. Conditional reabsorption of sodium and water takes place in this segment. Conditional reabsorption of sodium and water takes place in this segment. कौन सा segment? DCT. DCT is also capable of reabsorption of HCO3, that is bicarbonate, and selective secretion of hydrogen and the potassium ion, and NH3 ammonia to maintain the pH and sodium potassium balance in blood. And selective DCT is also capable of reabsorption of bicarbonate and selective secretion of hydrogen and potassium ion and ammonia to maintain the pH and sodium potassium balance in blood. Next, the diagram is given there. Next, we are reading collecting duct. These long ducts extend from the cortex of the kidney to the inner part of the medulla. Large amount of water could be reabsorbed from this ring to produce a concentrated urine. Large amount of water, collecting duct, गजब कर रहे हो तुम? To produce a concentrated urine. This segment allows passage of a small amount of urea into the medullary interstitium to keep up the osmolarity. It also plays a role in the maintenance of pH and ionic balance of blood by the selective secretion of H positive and K positive ions, that is hydrogen and potassium ions. Next is mechanism of concentration of the filtrate. Mammals have the ability to produce a concentrated urine. Concentrated का मतलब क्या होता है, याद है? बताओ. Mammals have the ability to produce a concentrated urine. Concentrated का मतलब होता है, क्या होता है? केंद्रित. Understood? और उसमें कहते हैं गाढ़ा. The Henle's loop and vasa recta play a significant role in this. किसमें? Mechanism of concentration of filtrate में कौन करता है? Henle's loop and vasa recta. The flow of filtrate in the two limbs of Henle's loop is in opposite direction and thus forms a counter current. The flow of blood through the two limbs of vasa recta is also in counter current pattern. The flow of blood through the two limbs of the vasa recta is also in a counter current pattern. The proximity between the Henle's loop and vasa recta as well as the counter current in them help in maintaining and increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium, that is from 300 m osmol liter inverse 300 mmol in liter inverse. In the cortex, that is 300 mol liter inverse in the cortex to about 1200 mol liter inverse in the inner medulla. 1200 का है inner medulla. This gradient is mainly caused by NaCl and urea, sodium chloride and urea. NaCl is transported by the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is exchanged with the descending limb of the vasa recta. Understood? NaCl is transported by the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is exchanged with the descending limb of vasa recta. NaCl is returned to the interstitium by the ascending portion of vasa recta. Similarly, small amounts of urea enters the thin segment of the ascending limb of the Henle's loop, which is transported back to the interstitium by the collecting tubule. The above described transport of substance facilitated by the special arrangement of Henle's loop and vasa recta is called the counter current mechanism. This mechanism helps to maintain a concentration gradient in the medullary interstitium. This mechanism helps to maintain a concentration gradient in the medullary interstitium. Understood? Presence of such interstitial gradient helps in an easy passage of water from the collecting tubule, thereby concentrating the filtrate urine. Human kidneys can produce urine nearly 4 times concentrated than the initial filtrate formed. Understood? So the next is regulation of kidney function. The functioning of the kidney is efficiently monitored and regulated by the hormonal feedback mechanism involving the hypothalamus, JGA, and to a certain extent the heart. Again I am repeating, it's regulated by hormonal feedback mechanism involving hypothalamus, GGA, and to a certain extent the heart. Osmoreceptors in the body are activated by changes in blood volume and body fluid volume and ionic concentration. Osmoreceptors in the body are activated by changes in blood volume, body fluid volume, and ionic concentration. An excessive loss of fluid from the body can activate these receptors, which stimulate the hypothalamus to release antidiuretic hormone ADH or vasopressin from the neurohypophysis. कहाँ से? Neurohypophysis. ADH facilitate water reabsorption from the later part of the tubule, thereby preventing diuresis. An increase in body fluid volume can switch off the osmoreceptor. किसमें increase? An increase in the body fluid volume can switch off the osmoreceptor and suppress the ADH release to complete the feedback. ADH can also affect the kidney function by its constrictory effect on blood vessel. This causes an increase in blood pressure. An increase in blood pressure can increase the glomerular blood flow and thereby the GFR. This causes an increase in blood pressure, and an increase in the blood pressure can increase the glomerular blood flow and thereby the GFR. Means GFR का मतलब क्या होता है? Glomerular filtration rate. So let's proceed the next. The GGA, juxtaglomerulus apparatus, play a complex regulatory role. कौन सा रोल प्ले करता है? GGA, complex regulatory law. A fall in glomerular blood flow, that is glomerular blood pressure, or GFR can activate the GG cells to release renin. GGA का फुल फॉर्म होता है जक्स्ट्रा ग्लोमेरुलर apparatus. Understood? A fall in glomerular blood flow, glomerular blood pressure GFR can activate the GG cells to release renin, RENIN, which converts angiotensinogen in blood to angiotensin first and further to angiotensin second, which converts angiotensinogen in the blood to angiotensin first and further to angiotensin second. Angiotensin second being a powerful vasoconstrictor. क्या है? Powerful vasoconstrictor. Angiotensin second increases the glomerular blood pressure and thereby the GFR. Angiotensin second है powerful vasoconstrictor. उतर गया दिमाग में? Increases the glomerular blood pressure and thereby the GFR. Angiotensin second also activates the adrenal cortex to release aldosterone. क्या रिलीज करता है? एल्डोस्टेरोन. Angiotensin second also activate the adrenal cortex. कॉर्टेक्स को चेंज करके मेडुला कर सकते हैं तो आपका ढक्कन और डब्बा गुल हो जाएगा. बट करेक्ट है adrenal cortex to release aldosterone. Aldosterone causes reabsorption of sodium and water from the distal parts of the tubules. This also leads to an increase in blood pressure and GFR. This complex mechanism is generally known as renin-angiotensin mechanism. An increase in blood flow to the atria of the heart can cause the release of atrial natriuretic factor (ANF). An increase in blood flow to the atria of the heart can cause the release of atrial natriuretic factor, that is ANF. ANF can cause vasodilation, dilation of blood vessels, and thereby decrease the blood pressure. ANF क्या करता है? ब्लड प्रेशर को डिक्रीज करता है. AD से याद कर सकते हो इसे, vasodilation. ठीक है, AD vasodilation and thereby decrease the blood pressure. ANF mechanism therefore act as check on the renin-angiotensin mechanism. क्या करता है? एक्ट एज ए चेक. किस पे? ऑन द renin-angiotensin mechanism. कौन करता है ये चेक का काम? ANF mechanism. Understood? Next is micturition. Urine formed by the nephron is ultimately carried to the urinary bladder where it is stored till a voluntary signal is given to the central nervous system, that is CNS. This signal is initiated by the stretching of the urinary bladder as it gets filled with urine. In response, the stretch receptors on the walls of the bladder sends signal to the CNS. The CNS passes on motor messages to initiate the contraction of the smooth muscles of the bladder and simultaneously relaxation of the urethral sphincter, causing the release of urine. I am repeating it again. In response, the stretch receptor on the walls of the bladder sends signal to the CNS. The CNS passes on motor message to initiate the contraction of the smooth muscles of the bladder and simultaneously relaxation of the urethral sphincter, causing the release of urine. The process of release of urine is called micturition, and the neural mechanism causing it is called micturition reflux. An adult human excretes on an average 1 to 1.5 liters of urine per day. कितना? 1 से 1.5 liter of urine per day. मूत्र. The urine formed is a light yellow colored watery fluid which is slightly acidic. pH is 6.0 and has a characteristic odor. On an average, 25 to 30 gram of urea is excreted out per day. Various conditions can affect the characteristics of urine. On an average, 25 to 30 gram of urea is excreted out per day. Various conditions can affect the characteristics of urine. Analysis of urine helps in clinical diagnosis of many metabolic disorders as well as malfunctioning of kidney. For example, presence of glucose, that is glycosuria, and ketones, that is ketonuria, in urine are indicative of diabetes mellitus. Presence of glucose, glycosuria, and ketones, that is ketonuria, is indicative of diabetes mellitus. Glycosuria और ketonuria का है diabetes mellitus. Next is role of other organs in excretion. Other than the kidney, lung, liver, and skin also help in the elimination of the excretory waste. Our lung remove large amount of CO2, approximately 200 ml per minute, and also significant quantities water every day. 200 ml per minute है, कुछ भी चेंज करके दे सकता है बट करेक्ट है minute, and also significant quantity of water every day. Liver, the largest gland in our body, secretes bile containing substance like bilirubin, biliverdin, cholesterol, degraded steroid hormones, vitamins, and drugs. Most of these substances ultimately pass out along with digestive waste. The sweat and the sebaceous gland in the skin can eliminate certain substances through their secretion. Sweat produced by the sweat gland is a watery fluid containing NaCl and a small amount of urea, lactic acid, etc. Sweat क्या क्या contain करता है? NaCl, that is sodium chloride, a small amount of urea and lactic acid, etc. Though the primary function of sweat is to facilitate a cooling effect on the body surface, it also helps in removal of some of the waste mentioned above. Sebaceous gland eliminates certain substances like sterols, hydrocarbons, and waxes through sebum. Sebaceous gland क्या क्या eliminate करती है? Sterols, hydrocarbons, and waxes. Understood? डबल इसलिए रिपीट करता हूँ ताकि माइंड में सेट हो जाए. ठीक है. This secretion provides a protective oily covering for the skin. Do you know that small amounts of the nitrogenous waste could be eliminated through the saliva too? Do you know? Yes, of course we know. Disorders of the excretory system. Malfunctioning of kidney can lead to accumulation of urea in blood, a condition called uremia, which is highly harmful and may lead to kidney failure. In such patients, urea can be removed by a process called hemodialysis. During the process of hemodialysis, the blood drained from a convenient artery is pumped into a dialysing unit called artificial kidney. Blood drained from a convenient artery is pumped into a dialysing unit after adding an anticoagulant like heparin. The unit contains a coiled cellophane tube surrounded by a fluid, that is dialysing fluid, having the same composition as that of plasma except nitrogenous waste. The porous cellophane membrane of the tube allows the passage of molecules based on the concentration gradient. As nitrogenous waste are absent in the dialysing fluid, nitrogenous waste क्या करते हैं? are absent in the dialysing fluid. This substance freely move out, thereby clearing the blood. And nitrogenous waste are absent in the dialysing fluid. This substance freely move out, thereby clearing the blood. The cleared blood is pumped back to the body through a vein after adding antiheparin to it. This method is a boon for thousands of uremic patients all over the world. Kidney transplantation is the ultimate method in the correction of the acute renal failures, that is kidney failure. Kidney transplantation is the ultimate method in the correction of acute renal failures, that is kidney failure. A functioning kidney is used in transplantation from a donor, preferably a close relative. A functioning kidney is used in transplantation from a donor, preferably a close relative, to minimize its chances of rejection by the immune system of the host. A functioning kidney is used in the transplantation from a donor, preferably a close relative, to minimize its chances of rejection by the immune system of the host. Modern clinical procedures have increased the success rate of such a complicated technique. Next is renal calculi, a stone or insoluble mass of crystallite salts, that is oxalates, etc., formed within the kidney. A stone or insoluble mass of crystallite salts, oxalates, etc., formed within the kidney. Glomerulonephritis, that is inflammation of the glomeruli of kidney. We are going to read the summary in a quick and speedy way. Okay, many nitrogen containing substances, ions, CO2, water, etc., that accumulate in the body have to be eliminated. Nature of nitrogenous waste formed and their excretion vary among animals, mainly depending on the habitat, availability of water. Ammonia, urea, and uric acid are the major nitrogenous waste excreted. Protonephridia, nephridia, Malpighian tubules, green gland, and the kidney are the common excretory organs in animals. They not only eliminate nitrogenous waste but also help in maintenance of ionic and the acid-base balance of the body fluids. In human, the excretory system consists of one pair of kidney, a pair of ureters, a urinary bladder, and urethra. Again, I am repeating it. Excretory system consists of one pair of kidney, a pair of ureters, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. पेयर में है वो किडनी है और पेयर में है वो यूरेटर है, बाकी यूरिनरी ब्लैडर एंड यूरेथ्रा अकेले. Each kidney has over a million tubular structure called nephrons. Nephron is the functional unit of the kidney and has two portions, glomerulus and renal tubule. Glomerulus is a tuft of capillaries formed by the afferent arteriole, fine branches of renal artery. That renal tubule starts with a double-walled Pomeranz capsule and is further differentiated into proximal convoluted tubule, that is PCT, Henle's loop, and distal convoluted tubule DCT. The DCT of many nephrons join to a common collecting duct, many of which ultimately opens into the renal pelvis through the medullary pyramids. The Bowman's capsule encloses the glomerulus to form Malpighian or renal corpuscle. Urine formation involves three main processes. The Bowman capsules enclose the glomerulus to form Bowman's capsule enclose the glomerulus to form Malpighian or renal corpuscle. Bowman capsule encloses the glomerulus to form Malpighian or renal corpuscle. Understood? Urine formation involves three main processes: filtration, reabsorption, and secretion. Filtration is a non-selective process. यहाँ पे कंफ्यूज करके सिलेक्टिव दे सकता है, बट करेक्ट है नॉन सेलेक्टिव प्रोसेस परफॉर्म्ड बाय द ग्लोमेरुलस यूजिंग द glomerular capillary blood pressure. About 1200 ml of the blood is filtered by the glomerulus per minute to form 125 ml of filtrate in the Bowman's capsule per minute, that is GFR. GGA, a specialized portion of the nephron, play a significant role in the regulation of GFR. Nearly 99% of the reabsorption of the filtrate takes place through different parts of the nephrons. PCT is the major site of reabsorption and selective secretion. Henle's loop primarily helps to maintain osmolar gradient, that is 300 to 1200 mol/liter inverse within the kidney interstitium. DCT and collecting duct allow extensive reabsorption of water and certain electrolytes which help in osmoregulation. Hydrogen, potassium, and NH3 could be secreted into the filtrate by the tubules to maintain the ionic balance and the pH of body fluids. Henle's loop primarily helps to maintain osmolar gradient, that is 300 mol/liter inverse to 1200 mol/liter inverse within the kidney interstitium. DCT and collecting duct allow extensive reabsorption of water and certain electrolytes which help in osmoregulation, that is H positive, K positive, and NH3 could be secreted into the filtrate by the tubules to maintain the ionic balance and the pH of the body fluids. A countercurrent mechanism operates between the two limbs of the loop of Henle and those of vasa recta. Capillary parallel to the Henle's loop is known as vasa recta. The filtrate gets concentrated and it moves down the descending limb. The filtrate gets concentrated as it moves down the descending limb, but it gets diluted by the ascending limb. Electrolytes and urea are retained in the interstitium by this arrangement. Density and collecting duct concentrate. Density and collecting duct concentrate the filtrate about 4 times, that is from 300 mol liter inverse to 1200 mol liter inverse. An excellent mechanism of conservation of water. Urine is stored in the urinary bladder till a voluntary signal from CNS carried out. It's released through urethra, that is micturition. Skin, lungs and livers also assist in excretion. With this, we completed the chapter. Thank you for hearing and have a great day.